In high school, I was the kind of boy hardly anyone noticed. I never chased popularity, never played the lead roles in school plays, and never won basketball tournaments. I like staying in the background, working on assignments, keeping notes in my notebooks, and planning small things that seemed unimportant to others. My life was steady, predictable, even a little monotonous. But everything changed that September morning when a new student walked into our classroom. Olivia. I remember that moment in every detail. Her long chestnut hair seemed to catch the light from the window, and her hazel green eyes reflected both curiosity and confidence. She smiled even when she was nervous, and that smile had the power to melt all the tension around her. When the teacher introduced her to the class, everyone started whispering. But for me, the world stopped. She sat down 2 desks away from me. And just a few days later, I noticed that Olivia always seemed to be looking for someone with her eyes. More often than not, that someone was me. At first, I tried to ignore it, pretending to be buried in my chemistry notes or algebra graphs. But one day, when I looked up from my notebook, she was already staring right at me. It was just a brief meeting of eyes, yet it completely turned my inner world upside down. We began to talk casually. She always found topics, from homework to the music on the radio. It felt as though she was genuinely interested in every little detail of my life. I wasn't used to someone listening to me so closely, and that fascinated me. Over time, our conversations grew into walks after school. I remember standing by the coffee machine with her, laughing as a drink spilled over my notebook while I couldn't manage a single word, too mesmerized by her voice. For me, this was the first true feeling of love. Not just a teenage crush, but that trembling inside when you see someone and realize, here she is. Your spring in the middle of ordinary days. I started noticing every one of her habits. The way she spun her pen when she was nervous, how she bit her lip while reading aloud, how she braided her hair during math class. These images carved themselves into my memory, and even back then, I knew they would stay with me forever. With each day, we grew closer. Our classmates teased us, but we never denied anything. We didn't need to explain it to anyone. We knew it ourselves. The future felt wide open and clear because she was there. And no matter what worries might wait ahead, it was enough for me to know that tomorrow I would see Olivia again, sit next to her, and live through another day that would feel like a small eternity. Falling in love with Olivia wasn't like the stories I had read in books or seen in movies. There were no fireworks or dramatic confessions under the stars. It was quieter, more subtle, like the sound of rain on a rooftop or the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. Yet it was real, undeniable, and it belonged to both of us. She felt it too. I could tell from the way her eyes lingered on me when we passed in the hallway, from the way she leaned closer during group work, as if to blur the line of personal space. And the soft notes she sometimes left in my notebook. Don't forget we're studying together tonight. Those small gestures meant more to me than 1,000 words. At night, we exchanged long text messages. Sometimes we talked about homework, sometimes about music, and sometimes about the strange fears and dreams that came with being teenagers, standing at the edge of adulthood. I often fell asleep with the phone in my hand, rereading her last message, feeling as though the world outside my room didn't matter as long as she was somewhere on the other side of that screen. One evening before prom, I walked Olivia back to her house after rehearsal. We stood awkwardly on her porch, the air filled with the faint hum of cicadas. The silence was heavy, full of things we wanted to say but didn't know how. Finally, as if by instinct, we leaned in and kissed, beneath the flickering glow of the porch light. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't rehearsed, but it felt right, like a promise we had both been waiting to seal. But promises, no matter how sincere, are tested by time. My family was going through financial struggles, and I had to take an evening job at a small supermarket to help out. While my classmates were out at parties or hanging around the diner, I was stocking shelves and learning how to stretch a paycheck. Olivia, on the other hand, was preparing for something bigger. She had been awarded a scholarship to a university in another city where she would begin studying dentistry. Her path was ambitious, demanding, and it required leaving. We tried to convince ourselves that distance wouldn't matter. We swore we'd write, call, visit during holidays. For a while, it worked. The texts kept coming, the calls filled with laughter and longing. But slowly, reality began to seep into the spaces between us. My shifts grew longer, and her classes more consuming. Replies turned into delays, calls into misconnections. What once felt effortless now required more energy than either of us knew how to give. It wasn't that we stopped caring, it was that life was pulling us in different directions, little by little, almost imperceptibly. And though our love was genuine, it began to feel like something fragile, like trying to hold water in our hands, only to watch it slip through our fingers. There was no dramatic ending between us, no shouting match under the rain or bitter words thrown like knives. Instead, it was a quiet unraveling, as if a thread that once held us tightly together had slowly frayed until it finally came loose. We both felt it, the distance that wasn't just measured in miles between cities, but in the silences that grew during our conversations. One late evening, while sitting on my bed with the glow of my phone lighting the room, I realized that we hadn't spoken in days. Not because we were angry, but because neither of us had the strength to bridge the gap anymore. I typed out a message, long, careful, hesitant. I told her I loved her, that I always would, but maybe we needed to let each other go. Part of me hoped she would argue, that she would fight for us, that she would say no. Instead, her reply came a few minutes later, gentle and heartbreakingly calm. I feel the same. Thank you for everything. That was it. No grand farewell, no final meeting. Just two young hearts quietly releasing one another so that both could keep moving forward. In the days that followed, I buried myself in work. My job at the supermarket became more than just a paycheck. It was a distraction, a purpose, a way to keep from drowning in what-ifs. I learned how to manage deliveries, balance cash registers, and talk to customers with a smile, even when inside I felt like collapsing. Slowly, a spark ignited within me. The realization that I could build something of my own, that I didn't have to stay in the shadow of what I had lost. It wasn't easy. I failed more than once, took loans I could barely repay, and spent countless sleepless nights doubting myself. But each time, I thought of Olivia, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. She had believed in me once, and that belief fueled me even in her absence. Meanwhile, I sometimes caught glimpses of her life through social media. Photos of her in a white coat at the dental school clinic, her wide smile as she stood beside classmates, the caption full of excitement for the future. She was thriving, and though it stung to see her so far from me, I felt proud. She was chasing her dreams just as I was beginning to chase mine. The pain of our separation didn't vanish overnight. It lingered, like a shadow at the edge of my days. But step by step, I began to build something new. And for the first time, I realized that heartbreak, as cruel as it seemed, had given me a gift, the push I needed to grow into the person I was meant to become. Life has a strange way of reconnecting people when they least expect it. Years had passed since high school, and both Emily and I had already walked our separate paths. One afternoon, while visiting a small cafe near one of my stores, I noticed a familiar face at a corner table. It was Emily. She had changed, of course, her features more mature, her presence calmer, but her smile was the same, carrying the warmth of all those years ago. We greeted each other with the kind of ease that comes only when two people share a history, even if that history belongs to the past. Sitting across from her, sipping coffee, I realized how far we had both come. Emily spoke about her husband, a dentist, and the practice they had opened together. Her voice carried pride and serenity, and it was clear that she was happy. I shared my own journey, telling her about the supermarket chain I had built, the challenges I had faced, and the unexpected victories that kept me going. There was no sense of competition or regret between us, only mutual respect and curiosity. It felt as though we had become quiet witnesses to each other's lives, tied not by longing, but by the comfort of friendship. Every so often, we agreed to meet again, just two old classmates, sitting at a cafe, letting the aroma of coffee and the soft murmur of conversation carry us back to simpler times. As the years moved forward, those occasional coffee meetings with Emily became small, cherished rituals, rare but meaningful. They were never about reigniting something that once was. Instead, they reminded us both of how far we had traveled from those classroom days when love felt like the center of the world. My own life was full in ways I could never have imagined